I just want to express to you guys the fact that you do not have jurisdiction over the refugee resettlement program is exactly why we need you to jump in with the citizens when I see what's happened in other areas where these refugee resettlements are located. It completely changes the community. St. Cloud, Minnesota, 10 years has been a refugee resettlement, and a local doctor here, I would have called him to ask permission to quote him by name if I had realized I was going to speak tonight. He's from St. Cloud, Minnesota, and when a friend of mine was visiting his office and just sharing the refugee resettlement issue, she called me afterwards. She said, "Oh, he said he's from St. Cloud, and you can't even recognize that town now." School districts are getting sued because they're trying to serve 30 different languages and cannot find the translators for some of these very obscure languages. Footbaths are having to be installed in Concord, New Hampshire, and we really need you to rise up with the citizens, because the days where we have an extra $10 million for secondary county roads are coming to a close. The taxpayers are going to be stuck with this program, while a few select people in our county are going to profit monumentally off of it. This is not right. A few select unelected people got to bring it here, and I need my county council people to stand with us and the citizens and say, no, this is not right. This is not what the people of Spartanburg County elected anybody to do. This is not what our taxpayer dollars are supposed to be spent for.
Next we have Michael Cutler. 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you. I come here all the way from Brooklyn, New York. I lived through 9/11. I was an INS agent for over 30 years. I've arrested terrorists in my career. I've testified before about 16 congressional hearings in Washington about the nexus between immigration, national security, and terrorism. I've provided all of you with a journal. I have the lead article about where we stand 14 years after the attacks. You know, Tip O'Neill, the former Speaker of the House, said that all politics is local. At the end of the day, all public safety is local. On 9/11, not only was America attacked, but my hometown was attacked. The ashes landed on my home, and it happened because our government failed to properly administer and enforce our immigration laws. We're being told that refugees are being brought to the United States are being properly vetted. The problem is they can't be vetted. There have been a series of reports by the CIA, testimony by FBI agents, that because of that, the nature of the world of Syria today, because ISIS is on the move and seizing buildings over in the Middle East, they have stolen passports, blank passports, printing devices, and are cranking out for a couple of $1,000s legitimate documents in the names of dead people. This is a prescription for a disaster. And if we can't properly vet individuals being brought from the United States, and we know that the goal of ISIS and other terrorist groups is to come to the United States to attack us. And this isn't a bad dream. This has happened repeatedly. And if you look at how many times we've naturalized people, only to have them go on and commit terrorist attacks less than a year after we give them citizenship. Think of Faisal Shahzad, the Times Square bomber. This creates a serious problem. I am sympathetic to the plight of refugees. I'm Jewish. My grandmother died in the Holocaust. I was named for her. I want us to be compassionate. But somehow when we hear the word compassionate immigration, we never hear about compassion for American citizens or American kids. We have 1 in 4 American children living below the poverty line. 9/11, 3,000 people paid the price because the Clinton administration refused to listen to testimony at a hearing on May 20th, 1997, and I participated in that hearing, about the clear threat of terrorism because of failures of the immigration system, and specifically because of fraud, people lying on visa applications, people lying on applications for immigration benefits. And this was 4.5 years before 9/11, and the predication for the hearing were 2 terrorist attacks carried out inside the United States in 1993. I'm here today telling you that because there is no integrity to the refugee program, no matter what words we hear, the reality is we cannot vet these people. There was an article in Newsweek November last year about how the U.S. military, working with the CIA to try to get rebels to work with our soldiers, we wound up bringing into that program terrorists and kidnappers. You bear the responsibility for the public of this community. The public is not happy with this program for justifiable reasons, and you need to understand that their safety, I will wrap up, but you need to understand the importance of this issue in terms of the lives of your own citizens here in Spartanburg. And as I said before Congress, no American city is safe if any American city is attacked. It's not about denying people sanctuary in the United States. It's about making darn sure that we don't, through our compassion, create opportunities for people from the other side of the world to come here and perpetrate more terrorist attacks and take more innocent lives.
Thanks very much.
Council, citizens of Spartanburg, and fellow South Carolinians, my name is Lauren Martell, and I'm an attorney from Hilton Head Island, South Carolina. I represent Michelle Wiles. I have to say that thank God Thomas Jefferson and John Adams didn't say, Tom, let's limit this to 3 minutes. This is the most ridiculous attempt at trying to understand what the law of unintended consequences is. It is almost, the ignorance of it is just superseded by the arrogance. You have an expert here that you don't have the respect or the Southern hospitality to give more than 3 minutes to. I will let you gentlemen know, and lady, that you all have been served with a copy of the letter that went to Ann Richards, the Department of U.S. Secretary of Immigration and Naturalization. She came down here for a meeting in Spartanburg that I attended, and we had a court reporter. That meeting was wholly inadequate, with the answers that could not be adequately given to us and in the time that they had, so we attached them to the record, and we have heard no answers, including Trey Gowdy's own questions. The ramifications of not doing anything and not doing what Joe Wilson did with his mayor and his local county council in Casey, South Carolina, which was a no-brainer. Just say no. You need to err on the side of caution for these people out here and their children. It is not prejudicial to this refugee program to put it on hold. According to Ann Richards, the refugees were vetted for 18 to 24 months by Department of Homeland Security appointee by Obama, Fatima Noor, who worked for World Relief. There's an incredible conflict right there that should be investigated before you proceed with this. Because the FBI is warning you, they cannot be vetted. This expert here is warning you, and he does not come from a place of just a bubble. He comes from a place of longevity and experience and living through terrorist attacks on our soil. The time for cocktail conversation is over. This is serious. This pharmaceutical circus right now, when we are talking about these people's lives, and they pay your salary to sit up here, and you don't have the respect to give these people an idea of what's really going on, it's not American. And I will tell you that foreign things are great. I love foreign things, but this is America. And DRS got bought out by an Italian company, and we all, I don't know if you know who DRS is, but it's a billion-dollar private contractor for war things like Apache helicopters and night vision and all from A to Z. It got bought out by an Italian company. And do you know who invests in that Italian company? The Libyan Investment Authority. So if you think that all foreign interests coming over in here to Spartanburg is acceptable, no sir, it is not. And we are about to get into a very serious issue with lawfare, because we as Americans are not clearly defining what due process is, what our United States Constitution is, and what our basic inalienable rights that come not from government, but from God.
Thank you very much. Jim McMillan.
First off, I'd like to take a minute to say that Catherine missed a few very important people when she was thanking the county. I'd like to thank all the taxpayers that made it possible for all these people to have these jobs and have these awards. Thank you. And another thing, I too am proud that we have industry here. But I don't know if you know this or not, but we have fewer Americans, percentage-wise, working today than any other time in our nation. And I don't know if you know this or not, but all those dollars that these foreign companies are making, they're sending them out of the country. If we could repatriate all of that money, we could pay off our national debt. So my father, he made his living in the textile mill. My mother made hers. A lot of people did. I'm proud that we were a textile state at one time. King George said that he didn't think the colonists of America had the stomach for a revolution. Was he right? I don't think so. And we don't always get to pick our battles. And I think in this refugee resettlement program, though, we do get to pick our battles. We do get to have some say in this. You guys get to have some say. Ms. Richards said that if we push back, they probably will not put those refugees here.
She said it.
She said it.
So what we're asking you to do is push back. Now, we as citizens have come to realize that if we want anything done, we've got to do it, because the elected officials aren't going to do it. We've got to take it on ourselves. But we all have skin in this game. You have skin in this game. You probably have grandchildren. Children. I know Mr. Bradley has a young child. And our government is moving people into our neighborhoods that are undesirable. If they were child molesters, we would know that. But because they come from another country where the CIA says they cannot be traced, we do not know who they are. We know that they're saying that this tsunami of people that's pushing down the walls in Europe are Syrians. But we have been told that maybe 10% of them are Syrians, maybe 50%. They come from Iraq, Iran, Egypt. They come here to subvert the American way of life. They don't come here to assimilate into our way of life. They don't come here to take on our traditions. They come here to transform America into a third world hellhole. And you're going to sit there and not push back? I hope when you have to face your children and they say, Daddy, what did y'all do when the refugees, Mama, what was y'all doing when the refugees came in here and took over our country? You can say, I didn't push back. But you know what? We as citizens, we're going to push back. You know, Ronald Reagan said that we're only one generation away from liberty being extinct. I just hope and pray that that next generation, that next wave of refugees is not Americans leaving America. Thank you.
Thank you. And Michelle Wiles.
I yield.
Okay. Larry Brad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Council. Initially, I was prepared to come in and yield my time to Mr. Cutler. Understand the situation as you explained it here, so there's not any opposition on that part. But I do want to thank Councilman Walker for being in the program last night. That he did get to hear Mr. Cutler, and I trust that he will be able to share that information with all of y'all. I also want to thank Mr. Bradley for being in another meeting earlier last week where we heard from Lynn and some others pertaining to the situation that is going on. As some of y'all know, I am running for District 5 school board, and I have had that question brought to me several times. What happens to our school board when we get children coming in with various languages and all that we're having to deal with now, and then turn around, that's going to be added expenses to our school board, to our school operations and all. So right now I have a whole lot of answers for them because, again, we got very limited facts because, as I understand it, once these people that are coming into the county are brought in and set up, then they're able to bring their families over here without a little question. And I assume that means many more children and all that's going to need to be educated. And again, we've got to be prepared for it. So we're trying to find out as much information as we can pertaining to this situation and try to be as prepared. Again, a lot of us don't agree with what's going on, but you have limited power. We have hopes that y'all will have a lot more power to be able to help us in some way, shape, or form to be able to rebut this thing to where we can at least have it under control situation. For that, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley.
Refugee Resettlement Program is a 35-year-old federally funded program. Until the late 90s, the United States chose the refugees we would accept from foreign countries. Since then, we've come to depend more and more on the UN High Commission on Refugees to make these choices for us. Most recently, up to 95% of the refugees were chosen by the UN. It costs $20,000 to $30,000 per person per year to care for the refugees once they are here. This same amount of aid would help provide for 200 refugees that were overseas and put them in a position that they could return to their homeland more readily once the conflict is over. As mentioned earlier, according to the FBI, because these refugees are coming from UN security or UN camps that are shuttered at failed nation states, they cannot be adequately vetted. As a result, the wealthiest Gulf nations are refusing to take any of them. If you look, World Relief, the contractor who has set up a grant to take the refugees here in Spartanburg, listed in the grant what a great place this is to live, what great opportunities economically between Spartanburg and Greenville exist, how immigrant-friendly this community is. All very true. But when you look at the Come Closer website here in Spartanburg, who will be delivering and caring for these refugees, they say the following, and I quote, "Spartanburg is home to what has been identified as the 5th most dangerous neighborhood in the United States. We have extremely high rates of unemployment, poverty, and domestic violence. Overall, we were recently listed as the 4th most miserable city to live in our country," which makes me ask, why are they so interested in bringing them here? The public is often told that a high percentage of refugees become quickly self-sustaining. Self-sustaining and self-sufficient are not synonymous. Self-sustaining simply means the local contractor is no longer on the hook to provide for the refugees. That means that the taxpayer is. For some reason, the community is not considered to be a stakeholder in the implementation of these programs by these contractors or the service providers who are here locally. As a matter of fact, they put together an awful lot of effort and resources to keep people who want to resist this in their place and silent. It's immoral and unprincipled to take from one person without the consent or knowledge and give to another. Wealth is not the only valuable that can be taken from citizens by bad policy. What moral principle justifies bringing harm to citizens by favoring foreigners or political supporters over citizens, or implementing policies that disadvantage our own citizens? What will end up happening is our most vulnerable citizens in this community will lose their benefits because they were going to be paid first to these refugees. This is our community. We are the people, the employers of the elected officials and the rightful citizens. The state of South Carolina has the authority to determine its role in refugee resettlement and to reject federal regulatory actions that supersede our constitutional authority, and to which states do not consent. Chief Justice Roberts recently stated in a ruling, states are sovereign and they should begin to act like it. Thank you.
Thank you. Josiah Mike Lucy.
Like most of these here tonight, I was prepared to yield my time to Mr. Cutler, but I will do my best here. I'd like to simply address the question of the spiritual impact that we're supposed to be having in the world if we are brothers and sisters in Christ. At a recent meeting, I heard a pastor speak in regards to how much we should be showing love to the stranger. And he listed a number of scripture verses. A friend of mine and I were talking about it afterwards, and he said, these are all addressed to the individual. The individual, my friends, is not synonymous with the civil government. God has ordained certain jurisdictions. That means certain boundary walls. Government has a certain job to do, okay, and the individual has a certain job to do. The area of love for one's neighbor is a very needed area in this country today, but it is not the role of the civil government. And you know what the role of civil government is. There is a job, there is a jurisdiction to which you are bound as civil magistrates, and that is to protect the people for which you are responsible. You know that today we have a situation, I believe, similar to the day of Nehemiah. The walls, the jurisdictions, the boundaries have fallen, and the people need to be defended. That is your role. It is your God-given duty. And here is what Nehemiah says. He says, let us rise up and build. So they strengthened their hands for this good work. And I would like you all to take this to heart tonight. But when Sanballat the Horonite and Tobiah the servant, the Ammonite, and Geshem the Arabian heard it, they laughed us to scorn and despised us and said, what is this thing that ye do? Will ye rebel against the king? Then I answered them and said unto them, the God of heaven, he will prosper us. Therefore we his servants will arise and build. But ye have no portion, nor right, nor memorial in Jerusalem. My friends, it is up to you to arise and build. And this argument that you can do nothing is false. It is preposterous, if nothing else. If you had courage, you could tell the county sheriff not to enforce certain things that the state is doing. You could tell them to intervene and not allow these to settle here. But at the very least, if you didn't agree to do that, you could, as citizens, as personal people, stand up and say, this is a bad idea, and these are reasons why our county will not be benefited for the reasons that your citizens have been saying tonight. Also, you could pass a resolution. Every committee has the power to pass a resolution, and you could pass something to say, we do not approve of what is going on. So these are simple ways. You know, I ask you, rise up and build. This is a time when you need Nehemiah's walls of protection. Fulfill your God-given jurisdiction. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Horn. Let it go on record that this is a strategy of the United Nations, which, by the way, if you go to the headquarters of the United Nations, their meditation room is ran by a Luciferian organization. That's on, you can Google that, it's true. How can you trust a group that has a meditation room that is ran by a Luciferian society? How can you trust a group that says, you've got a constitution, well, we don't care about that, whatever we do, you have to obey? Ann Richards came in to Spartanburg County and said, we're going to bring refugees whether you like it or not, unless your county stands up, which you guys have not made that decision to. It sounds like you're not going to stand up against them. But they're going to bring these people in. Who knows how many pedophiles? Who knows how many convicted murderers? We don't have any idea. There is no way to vet these people. This officer over here, is his job not tough enough?
That's right.
I have a magazine right here. It tells in clear detail they're trying to nationalize our police. Wouldn't it be a perfect opportunity for them to create chaos across the United States to where people like him have to call on the federal government to help out? When South Carolina was created and other states were created, the county governments had local police departments that didn't rely on governments above them. The sheriff is in control. The sheriff can arrest people. I'm going to point out somebody that he just left. But the guy that was sitting in front of Josiah, his name is, let's see here, if I can find it real quick. Jason Lee. Is Jason Lee still here? Okay. Jason Lee is the one that's helping to orchestrate this along with Dr. Goodrow. And this is treasonous. This is treasonous, especially for Christians, to be working with the United Nations, a group that has a meditation room that is ran by a Luciferian organization. Is this not laughable? I mean, come on, New World Order, conquer us. This is what's happening. When we do nothing, this is what's happening. And I'm sick of it. I've got a young child. Justin's got 2 kids. Dave Brett, I know you have a grandchild here. 2 grandchildren. So how many bad people are we going to let in our community? And how many police officers are going to put up with this? So just write a resolution. Just write a resolution, send it to President Obama, send it to the Secretary of State, and say, we're not going to help you, and we don't want this to happen. And our county sheriff is going to arrest people that try to orchestrate this, because this is treasonous. That's all.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
Mr. Brito? Mr. Brito here? Christina? Yeah. Christina here? Stephanie Nyson? Stephanie? Did I get your last name right? Steph? Negnes. Okay, thank you.
Hi. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about how Obama is involved in this. I don't know if you all know it, but Obama policy for the refugee resettlement program is administered through the White House. On November 21st, 2014, President Obama signed an executive order establishing the White House Task Force on New Americans. And so this task force, they published, they issued a report here. It's called Strengthening Communities by Welcoming All Residents, a Federal Strategic Action Plan on Immigrant and Refugee Integration, the White House Task Force on New Americans. And there's a few goals they've outlined and objectives in this 70-page report. I'd like to talk about one of them especially. One of their goals is to train immigrants and refugees to be citizen activists, expanding opportunities for them to, quote, engage in their receiving communities, unquote, because coming from various third world environments, quote, they may not be aware of its importance or how they can affect change at the local, state, and federal levels. I don't know about you all, but I do not want to see people from the Middle East who are accustomed to Sharia law and who have a whole culture based on the Muslim faith. I don't want to see them being empowered to affect change on our local, state, and federal levels. I just think this is a very So I want to encourage you all to please do something about this. Even if you can't do something quote-unquote legally, like you can still make a huge difference. You all have a lot of influence in the community, and you can stand up, you can pass a resolution, you can call Nikki Haley. I'm sure she would listen to you all a lot more than some of us as citizens. I want to encourage you to build walls. Someday I hope to be married and have children, and I really want them to grow up in a community that's not overrun by Muslims. If you've seen what's happened in other communities where they've let a lot of refugees more and more keep coming, and they start building mosques and taking over the communities, and Obama wants them implementing or helping. They want them to be engaging in their communities, affecting policies and stuff. And I do not trust Obama and what his intentions are.
Thank you,
So
Stephanie.
please pass a resolution and do everything you can to stop this.
All right, that's 30 minutes. Appreciate you being here. We're close to the 30 minutes. There's one more. Larry Bateman, you got 3 minutes if you'd like to speak. How are you today?
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the council, thank you for hearing me. I served 18 years in 501c3 organizations, working with across numerous continents with nationals and ministering to people in need. And so I have a heart for people that are overseas and that have needs and those that come here. I've got 8 grandchildren, and it's been directed that you have members of your family. People whose method of operation, whose culture, whose traditions, and whose religion is totally contrary and desires to supplant ours is something that cannot be allowed to come in and foment, as we've seen testified here and in a number of cities across America that I've looked at data about. I'm not really primarily concerned about the people that, 30 people that have come in by the end of this month in the upstate, Spartanburg County, Greenville County. But nobody knows what the other 8 entities besides World Relief are doing, how they're vetting them and how they're bringing them in. But what about the tsunami of people that are going to come in the next wave of 100 people or whatever? 2,200 people got off a train in Munich this past week, and you want to know how many children were on board the refugee train? 0. Want to know how many women were on board? 0. Want to know how many young men were on board? All of them. That's a whole lot of testosterone to be loosed in anybody's community, and without any spiritual or cultural restraint. Women in the Muslim countries are escorted wherever they go. Anybody else is free game. When we bring somebody in with that kind of background and mindset, we put all of our children, our wives, and everybody in our community at jeopardy. So the president can decide how many people he's going to bring in and allow to migrate to this country to be refugees. He gets to choose that. The State Department gets to vet them. Maybe, maybe not. When they come to, it's kind of like a MBA draft thing, and all the 9 agencies, of which World Relief is one, they get to choose which ones they want. And Jason Lee and World Relief in Spartanburg don't have to take somebody just because it comes down the pike. But since every head counts, and there's money to be made in that, how long can that, how many people can be turned down before there's more and more people here? It's the tsunami that's coming. You need to take it to the governor. You need to call for public hearings in Spartanburg County, Greenville County, and across the upstate, so people can come out and say,
Right, that concludes the public comment period. And again, I think the Herald Journal explained our position eloquently a couple of weeks ago. And our position is you need to contact the governor of South Carolina. Thank you very much.
Gentlemen and lady, you're on notice though. You've all signed the certified letter that puts you on notice. So if anything happens, you're on notice.
Thank you. Right, thank you very much.
See, that's the difference between us. You think we're fighting, and I think we're finally talking.
Who the hell do you think you are?
Move it a little bit to the right.